Hello and welcome to Sunrise Cardcast, your one-stop podcast shop for all things hockey cards. My name is Eric Andrews, also known in the hobby as Hammerhawks, and I'm joined by my co-host and fellow hobbyist Aaron Goldstein, better known as Crease Collector. So just to kick things off for the episode, we wanted to update you guys on that Sidney Crosby 0506 Upper Deck Young Guns rookie card that received a BGS 10 black label that was recently sold. So like we've mentioned in the past, it was auctioned by Golden Auctions and was one of only two Crosby Young Guns thus far to have received a BGS 10 black label grade. And like we've said, the opening bid for the card was $1,500 US, and the auction ended on September 20th, which of course that's a little while ago at this point, but obviously haven't had an episode since then. But yeah, it ended up selling for $30,000 US before the buyer premium. So with that buyer premium, it ended up being $36,900 US. So definitely a very interesting auction to see how it played out. And another big card in the hockey card hobby that was auctioned off this year, and just continuing to factor into the uptick in the hobby that we've seen this year.
Yeah, definitely a huge card on the market. One of many we've seen this year. I think we could even do kind of like a recap of all the big cards coming to auction, because there have been a few massive ones in this one. Same thing with that, same story there. Do you think that was a good price, or, like a bit of an overpayment, or somewhere that this will come to market again, maybe in the future, and they could be having a little bit of a steal on their hands?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not really the $1 million question; it's the $30,000 question. But
Exactly.
no, I mean, I think going back to our conversation about it earlier, I think that's probably a pretty fair price. I think a lot of people, just looking at kind of the ranges of predictions, both ourselves and just other collectors throughout the hobby, a lot of people kind of thought that on the low end it might go 20 or 25,000, and some people thought it might work its way up to 40, maybe 45 or 50,000. So 30,000 was, roughly kind of in the middle ish. So I think that was, definitely a fair price for what it is. Yeah, I mean, is there room for it to grow? I think so. Just with how we've seen cards, appreciate in value both recently, but also, over the long haul. I mean, you look at just the history of the Crosby Young Gun, just in a raw condition. There were points in time where you could get a Crosby Young Gun for what, like 200 US, and now, I mean, you're paying what, 750 for a raw copy.
Probably a little more.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely gone up in value. Will it triple in value down the road? No, probably not. But once he ends up hanging him up and gets into the Hall of Fame, I mean, there could definitely be another jump in price. And yeah, it'll be interesting to keep tabs on Crosby rookie cards, and especially cards like this, over the next 5 or 10 years, whenever he ends up calling it a career. But yeah, getting back to your question, I do think there is some room for growth still. I don't know that it would be a considerable amount. I mean, I don't think it would ever become a $100,000 card or anything like that. But, could it go up to 40 or 50,000 down the road? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially noting that this isn't the only black label out there. This is one of two. So it's not like we're talking about a card that has that air quotes, one of one type uniqueness to it. So I think it's a fair value for this card. It's kind of funny talking, a $36,000 card all in, fair value. But I think considering what that card is in the hobby right now, and obviously the growth, like you mentioned, I think that's a fair price. And I don't know who bought the card, but if they were to sell it in 5-10 years, I don't think they would do too bad, especially if and when Crosby does hang him up, and of course he's a lock for the Hall of Fame. So yeah, I definitely think it was a good buy. And we don't normally talk about investments too much on this show, but I definitely think in that regard, I think it was a pretty decent investment for a lot of coin. We're just going to move along here. For those who do follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you kind of noticed that I received a nice little package from Upper Deck this week, and that was a person who worked with Upper Deck on that campaign reached out to me and decided to send me some stuff. And that is going to be, that kind of prize pack is going to be part of their hashtag Collect Alexis campaign that they're going on right now. And it's just kind of to celebrate Alexis Lafreniere's kind of welcome to the NHL, because he's going to be drafted soon. And of course, we don't know with everything going on when he's going to play. But this is, of course, his welcome, and being an Upper Deck athlete and having that exclusive with him right now. Upper Deck just wants to do something like that, very similar to their Collect Connor campaign when Connor McDavid was starting to break into the NHL. So we have a couple items, as you can see in that picture. If you follow me on social media. And we're going to be doing some giveaways with those items. Not all of them, just mainly the hoodie and the tumbler mug. So definitely keep your eyes out on social media for that kind of giveaway. So, and also if you want to enter in the contest that Upper Deck has going on right now, just visit their Instagram page, and you'll find their current caption contest that you can win kind of a prize pack just like I did. So definitely keep your eye out for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That was really cool and nice of them to hook you up with that package. And obviously it's nice that, that we are able to share a few of those things with you guys, and hopefully, those items end up going to a good home. We'll probably end up doing 2 separate drawings just so that 2 people are able to win something. But yeah, definitely keep your eyes out for that. I think the tentative plan with that right now is probably to launch the contest at some point early this coming week, and maybe we'll pick a winner toward the end of the week once the draft happens and Lafreniere is presumably a New York Ranger. So yeah, like we've said, just keep your eyes out for that, and hopefully those items will find a good home.
Definitely. All right, and now we're going to go on to the main topic of tonight's episode. For those who have been in the hobby for, I guess, any length of time, you know that packaging and shipping your cards is pretty, a big foothold in this hobby. We're not all neighbors, so, shipping your cards out to other people around the world is, quite frequent in this hobby. And so packing and shipping cards is a very important topic that some might overlook. But as someone who, and Eric, I think you can definitely speak on this more than I can right now, especially with the year that you have had, unfortunately, with packaging and shipping, how important this really is in the hobby, and how it can kind of make or break, those transactions. Some people are dealing with low-end cards and some people are dealing with high-end cards. But honestly, to me, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I think every collector needs to have kind of like a standardized, like almost like a system for packing and shipping out your cards, because, it doesn't matter if it's a $1 card or $1,000 card or, a $36,000 card. You need to make sure that your cards are hopefully, protected enough when you receive it, but also when you're on the other end of it and shipping them out. So we're going to talk about kind of tips and tricks about how to pack and ship your cards, so that whether you're on one side of the trade or the other, it has kind of a positive ending, in that department.
I can't stress enough how important this is. We've wanted to do an episode about this for a while, but it seems like almost every week I've been getting a package of some kind that the packaging just isn't what it should be. And I don't really understand why that is. I don't feel like I've ever had poor packaging coming with this regularity ever in the past. Part of that probably has to do with that there's new people in the hobby and there's people that have come back to the hobby after time away. But
I was just going to mention that. Exact point. Do you think it's because of all this influx of new collectors? Do you think that is one of the reasons why we see, this, in my opinion, like I agree, very poor level of shipping?
Yeah, I think that's definitely factoring into it. And, unfortunately, that's probably the majority of it. I would at least hope it is. It's just people that don't know better. But I mean, there definitely are instances where I've just receive packages from people that I know have been doing this for at least some time, and it's just completely unacceptable. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, use your head. So just with all of that, we felt that now was finally the time to do this episode and focus on that a little bit more, and kind of unpack the do's and don'ts of packaging and shipping. So I guess just to kick things off with that, starting off with how not to package. Anything that involves not using a penny sleeve, you're not using any type of plastic protection for the card, whether that be a top loader or a one touch. I've got a package, I think, I don't know, a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, where I believe it was roughly 9 or 10 cards in the package, and literally not a single one of them had a penny sleeve. And luckily for me, none of the cards were damaged at all, which is borderline miraculous. And I messaged the seller and just said, hey, just, to let you know, I received your package. As I'm sure you know, none of the cards were in penny sleeves, and that is not acceptable, and that's not standard for the hobby. Luckily for both of us, none of the cards were damaged, but by using that technique of not using penny sleeves, you're kind of just asking for trouble, and it's really just a matter of time until something happens, and you have to end up taking damaged cards back and giving someone their money back, just because you weren't willing to spend whatever 10 cents on penny sleeves. So yeah, I think that's really been one that I've noticed a lot recently. That's not the only package that I've gotten recently that has not had penny sleeves. I actually got a package that exact same day that it was just cards and top loaders, no penny sleeves. And then the guy used rubber bands to quote unquote seal the top loaders so that the cards wouldn't fall out. Fortunately, those cards were undamaged. But yeah, so just the fact that I got whatever 15 cards all in one day that none of them had penny sleeves. It's like, what are people doing? Like, what are you thinking?
Yeah, no, that's tough. What about when, I guess it's like better, but if you buy, 4 cards or something, and, maybe they're lower end, and, someone puts these 4 or 5 cards in a single penny sleeve, and then inside sort of a bigger top loader. Like, I don't mind that. I guess it depends on the collector, and of course what condition the cards show up at your door in, but to me, I don't mind that. Like, if they try to just put at least all the cards in one single penny sleeve, because no penny sleeves at all is just pretty poor, I think. But if they try and do something like that, like kind of a hybrid, like maybe not for every card, but for at least, all the cards in one single penny sleeve and then in one top loader, I think is not the best, but I think it's a little better. So I guess, it's improvement.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think with that, something that factors into that is also the specific cards that you're talking about. There are some cards that you can do that with and they're fine. They're not going to have, any notable damage from doing that. Probably if you're looking at something like OPG or something, just the material and the card stock that those cards are made with just aren't as susceptible to surface damage as some things that have a glossier stock, or specifically an acetate card. I've had in the past where I've had some Upper Deck Ice cards that have all been in one penny sleeve, and over the years they end up just not even just like getting stuck together, because you can unstick them, but just getting surface damage from just being rubbed up right against other cards. So that's definitely something to note. I mean, it definitely is better to ship cards that way than not using penny sleeves whatsoever, like you said, Aaron. But yeah, I mean, I think kind of the gold standard for packaging is every card has its own penny sleeve. Ideally, every card has its own top loader.
Yeah.
That's not as big of a deal. I mean, if you end up putting, 5 base cards in a whatever 130 point top loader, that's not a big deal. But
Yeah, we're
yeah,
talking about like 5 or 6 cards of like some sort of significance.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
no, I agree. Like everything needs to be like, think about it like every single card in that deal is like it's each individual deal. You know what I mean? Like, pretend like all 5 of these cards are going to 5 different people, and then you package them up individually, and then you try and figure out a way to get them all together, and then you ship them.
yeah, that's interesting. And with that too, like if these are cards that have been in your collection, whether they were in your personal collection or they were just traders or whatever, odds are probably decent that you didn't just have them all like clumped in one penny sleeve and one top loader. I mean, I guess you could have, but you probably at some point had them separated into their own folders. So it's kind of also just strange that some people will like take them from being separated and then just combine them when, I mean, yeah, it's saving you, I guess, supplies and maybe a very minor amount of weight if you're using one top loader compared to 5 or 6. But I get it, but I don't. Like it's you're not really accomplishing much other than just saving a few supplies, that you're probably just going to be getting right back if it's a trade. You're going to be getting those top loaders right back, or if you're buying something or whatever it might be. And even though supplies are definitely more so at a premium right now than they usually are, they're not impossible to find. So, and even a lot of times you can find people, and I've done this in the past, where I'll find somebody on Facebook or on a forum somewhere, and whether they have advertised it themselves or I just know that they do it, and I make a deal where they'll just send me a big box of old supplies. Obviously I want them to be in decent and usable condition, but yeah, I mean, I forget how long ago it was, maybe a couple years ago. I bought I think a medium flat rate box of top loaders and one touches off of a guy on Hobby Insider for like $30 or something.
Oh, I think that was like last year. Some guy was advertising that. I remember because I was kind of, you know, inquiring about those as well. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I'm still like, I still have a good amount of that stuff left. And, it's whatever, a year or whatever later. And, uh, I've used most of that stuff for shipping. But some of it, I've just said, hey, I need a top loader for this card I got. And great. I have a box of top loaders sitting right here. So awesome. None of that stuff was brand new. It was all just lightly used stuff that was still in perfectly good shape. But yeah, I mean, just, it's not a big expense. And I mean, you should want to be taking care of your cards anyway. If you're putting money and time into this hobby, you should want to be protecting your investment the best you can, but also with that understanding that at some point, some or many, or maybe even all of the cards that you have will be going to somebody else at some point down the road. So, kind of just like having that respect for those other collectors and saying, okay, I just have this card in the meantime, but I know I'm not going to have it forever. So, it's my job at this point to protect this card and make sure that whenever it does go to someone else, that it's in as good of a shape as it can be in. So, yeah, I think just kind of that mentality is something that a lot of people unfortunately don't have nowadays. Another crazy story I'll share is earlier this summer, I bought a lot of cards for my 0304 Master Collection project. And it was basically like a complete set of some rookie cards from a product. And I was negotiating with the guy. I think I'd already bought some other cards off of him, and we were negotiating this set of rookie cards into the deal at that point. And we agreed on a price, got it done, all good. I pay, he sends them out, awesome. I get the package in, and this set of cards, and I believe it was somewhere around 40 to 45 cards. So, a somewhat decently sized stack. I mean, I wasn't expecting for him necessarily to put each and every single one in penny sleeves and its own individual top loader. I mean, that's just a lot to do. I mean, obviously, it would have been really nice if he did, but even if he had just put them in, one of those two-piece slide boxes or something and taped that shut so that, they couldn't move around too much. That would have been fine. That's kind of what I was expecting. But I don't know that I've ever seen this done before. I've heard of it being done, but I don't think I'd ever had it done myself. I open up the package, take the cards out, and the guy literally took the stack of cards, wrapped them in a piece of paper, like just took a piece of printer paper, folded the computer printer
No
paper
way.
around the cards, and then put them in a bubble mailer.
That's insane. That's actually insane. Like I think that's just insane. Like how did those cards make it to you in one condition? Like, like I've seen horror stories of cards getting damaged when they're packaged perfectly. I saw one the other day and it was in a one touch or something. And I guess at the sorting center or something, it got punctured and the card was just mashed to bits. And, the plastic was everywhere. It got all shredded and whatnot. But yeah, that happened with a protected card. So in your scenario, how those cards even made it to you in one piece is just a miracle.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely were not mint condition by any means, and I was not happy. I mean, I sent him a message being like, what were you thinking? Like, what are you doing? Like, you can't do that.
Yeah, that computer paper bit just gets me. Like, that's
And
just.
I know. And of course, I mean, I don't know what I was expecting for a response, but the response I got was, well, the price you paid was less than you wanted, so I was trying to save money on packaging and shipping costs.
Yeah, no, like that's the thing. Like you can't really like no. See, if someone wants to, and this is just my opinion, but if someone wants to save money on, shipping cards, and we'll talk about, the PWEs, the plain white envelopes in a second. But if someone does want to save money on shipping, that's fine. I think we all want to save money on shipping or try and ship it a different way or whatever. But I think if you do want to try and save money there, at least clear it with the person that is buying your cards. Like I've had people come to me and say, hey, I'm giving you a deal on this, so I kind of want to save money on shipping. Let's do it this way. And then they kind of clear it with me first. And as long as both parties agree, then that's totally fine. But just kind of going, like kind of undercutting you a little bit, unknowingly, with that response, I just wanted to save money on shipping. That in a nutshell is fine, but the way he went about it, kind of cutting you out and then just sending it like he did, wrapped in computer paper, is just we're kind of recording right now, but it's very poor, and I'll leave it at that. It's very, very poor. So it's a poor practice. Not saving money on shipping is not a poor practice, but just the way he went about it, and of course the way he eventually shipped the cards is very poor. So I think to anyone out there wanting to save money on shipping, I know where your head's at. Shipping does add up, especially if you're a bulk buyer or seller. But at least clear it with the person you're buying first. At least both parties know the risk, and people can both save some money. Maybe the buyer just doesn't have to pay as much because you're saving money on shipping, and so it's a nice two-way street. But again, just clear with both parties, and that's fine. But don't do what that guy did, and just make the price that Eric paid, the reason that you ship it so poorly. I just think that is very, especially when there's a lot of new people in the hobby, especially when there's a lot of talk about grading and a lot of submissions going on right now. And the big trend we see right now in, all the emphasis people put on grading now is extremely heightened, I would say. And so shipping cards right now is a very, very sensitive issue. And I think it has to be talked about. And I think what this guy did here was not cool. And yeah, that's very unacceptable. So clear with both parties and you're fine. But I can only imagine your reaction just getting a card wrapped in printer paper that we all have at our home offices right now.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, two things that, that kind of come to my mind in that instance. Like, one, if you weren't happy with the price that I was paying, like I wasn't forcing you to take the offer. Like if you weren't happy with that, say, give me $5 more. Like I probably would have done that. So
Yeah.
it's like if
Yeah.
if that's the difference between you sending me these cards, and they literally every single one show up with corner damage on all four corners. I'm perfectly willing to pay an extra $5 to ensure that doesn't happen.
Exactly. Like if you're a seller, don't be afraid to ask, hey, I'll ship this in a bubble mailer or whatever, but I might need you to pay a little bit more, if, your standard way is very cheap, for example. And I'm sure, again, like in Eric's scenario, he wouldn't mind paying that extra little bit to have his cards get to him, especially a big card lot like that, get to him safe and sound. So don't be afraid to ask, or just kind of, send it under the table, if you will, and just kind of hope for the best. Again, like I know it's just cards, and for some people, who's new to the hobby, they might not get it yet. But for some people, especially with big lots of cards, who might be turning those around and selling them, or if it's for their personal collection, these cards I think deserve to be treated with some sort of care. And don't do what that guy did.
Yeah, and another thing with that too, like if he was concerned about trying to save money on it, like he really didn't even do that because he was still sending it in a bubble mailer as a package. Like whether or not he packaged it like that or put the cards in the plastic box, put the plastic box in the bubble mailer, it basically would have been the same weight, the same everything. So he wasn't saving any money doing that.
I guess it was just, I hate to say it, but like being, extremely lazy.
Yeah, lazy and just ignorant and not caring about anything.
Especially when someone buys cards off you. I think that, not that there should be a difference. There should never be a difference between, oh, this person bought this card from me versus this person's trading for this card from me. But especially when someone gives you their hard-earned money, you need to send this person their cards in good condition. I mean, things happen in shipping. Like I've received cards with some damage, and it totally was not the fault of the seller. But like things are always going to happen. But at least try your best. And then when it leaves your hands, that I package those cards correctly. And after that, hey, whatever happens. There's always a risk sending tiny pieces of cardboard, but at least you did your part. And I think that's, if there's one takeaway from this episode, at least try and do your part when it comes to the deal, which is, of course, being a good negotiator, offering fair prices, things like that. But also the shipping is a very important part of that deal too, that we feel some people unfortunately overlook.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just kind of, we focused a little bit here on, some things that are what not to do. But, of course, we don't want to just purely focus on that. We want to share, okay, what are things that you actually should be doing with this? So, I'll just share how I do things. And Aaron, I'm sure we probably do things fairly similarly, but if you do something different, feel free to share that too. But my process for packaging a card, odds are probably pretty good that that card was already in a penny sleeve and top loader anyway. Yeah, it's just how I store the majority of my cards, whether I'm keeping them or not. But so I'll take that card that was in the penny sleeve and the top loader. And another thing to note with that too is it has to be an appropriately sized top loader. You should not be putting
Yes.
you shouldn't be putting a normal 35 point base card in a 180 point top loader, because that card is going to be moving around a lot. Can you get...
Same thing with trying to jam in a card that top loader was not meant to hold.
Yes.
Jamming in, like one of those thick cards, you got a nice cup RPA, and you're trying to, cram it into a tiny little top loader, for a UD game jersey. Like that's not going to happen.
Right. So just having that awareness of like, okay, like what is the intention of this top loader? Is this meant for this card? Okay, is this card way too small or way too big for it? Is there a perfectly sized top loader for every certain card out there? No, there's not. And that's okay. There's ways of getting around that.
And the penny sleeves help too.
They do. It seems like they wouldn't really add much thickness, and they really don't, but it actually does kind of make a difference in some situations. And going along with that, one thing that I see some people do that is definitely effective is if you have a top loader that's a lot thicker, well, hopefully not a lot thicker, but it's thicker than the card that you are sending, is they'll take extra penny sleeves or even just extra base cards, and they'll put those in there with that card to make sure that it can't move around within that top loader. So you're essentially filling that extra space to limit that motion, which is good. Obviously, it'd be nice to just have the correct size top loader from the start, but that's definitely better to do that than to just put, one card, a normal size card into a 130 point top loader or whatever it might be, and then that card is rattling around in every which direction throughout the shipping process. Anyway, going back to my process, I have the card in the penny sleeve in the top loader, and then what I do is I take a piece of painter's tape, okay, not shipping tape, not scotch tape, not any other kind of tape, painter's tape, and I tape the top of the top loader closed so that the card cannot slide out. Generally, what I do too is kind of pinch the top of the top loader where the opening is so that it's more or less kind of closed. That again just kind of helps the card from sliding up to the top. If you don't do that pinching method and you just kind of tape it loosely, the card can still slide out. And sometimes I've seen cards even get literally stuck to the tape and it damages the card. So just kind of taking that extra step to just apply some pressure to the top of the top loader to kind of close it a little bit and make sure that that card won't slide around much, if at all. And then once that's done, then you get one of those clear plastic bags with the adhesive on them. They're called team bags because they generally can hold about 20-ish raw cards. They're not in penny sleeves or top loaders or anything, so a team's worth of cards. That's why they call them team bags. But you take one of those team bags and you put your sealed top loader into the team bag. And then at the very least, I would put at least one decoy card. So that's the blank cardboard cards, so to speak, that come in packs that, prevent pack searching. And those cards are really good for just preventing bending. And, sometimes I'll do one on both sides of the card. It kind of just depends on the card. If it's a thicker card to start with, I'll often just do one because a thicker card is going to be more durable to start with anyway. But if it's a thin card, I will typically use a decoy on both the front and back and have the top loader in between them within the team bag. So then once you have the top loader with the card in it and the one or two decoys in the team bag, then you obviously close and seal it. And then you grab a bubble mailer and, put the card in the bubble mailer and seal it up really nicely. I make a point of it to pretty much coat the entire bubble mailer in packaging tape, not scotch tape, not any other kind of tape, but legitimate packaging tape. I don't go crazy with it. I only do one layer of tape for the most part. But to me, I think that's just an important thing to do because you just never know what's going to happen to a package. It might get caught in a sorting machine somewhere. It might just get dropped. It might, who knows what could happen to it. So if you have it pretty much entirely coated in that packaging tape, it's at least going to give it a little bit of reinforcement and durability. It's going to prevent, some rips and tears that could happen. It's kind of going to help waterproof it a little bit as well. It's not adding that much of an expense to just coat it in the tape. Again, like I said, you're just doing one layer of tape. It's not like you're just endlessly wrapping the package in tape. I mean, that's another pet peeve of mine is when people just go nuts on tape, whether it be on the package itself or, they wrap, painter's tape around the top loader like 37 times and it takes 10 minutes to get the card out of the package. I've had that happen multiple times in the last few weeks, and I always send Aaron a picture of it when it happens.
It's hilarious.
But yeah, for you it is. But
it is funny. No, I've been on the other end of that too. So it's frustrating, but I hate better safe than sorry.
That's true. Definitely always better safe than sorry, without a doubt. But yeah, that's just how I do things. I don't think I've ever had an issue with someone receiving a card damaged from me when I've done that. That's how I've been doing it for years and years and years. there are definitely other methods I've used in the past, especially when it comes to international shipping, just when it comes to dropping down that price. But yeah, I mean, even nowadays, there's ways to still be using a bubble mailer to send internationally, and it's really affordable. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good summary of a good way to package cards. And with that, one thing that I really take pride in when I'm packaging a card to send to somebody, kind of like I referenced earlier, is just having respect for that person and understanding, that now that we've made this deal, they own that card. It's not mine anymore. So how, on the flip side, if it's a trade and I'm sending this card to someone in a trade, how would I want to be receiving the card from them? Would I want my card wrapped in a piece of computer paper shoved in a bubble mailer? No. So why would I do that for someone else? Right? Like that's just not common courtesy. It's not being respectful. It's just being rude. So just, having that awareness of this isn't my card anymore. So it's my responsibility to do what I can to make sure that it gets to its owner in as good of shape as possible. So then kind of moving along to just some shipping cost tricks, because we've talked about, that can kind of be a concern for some collectors, and understandably so. I mean, there are ways that if you just package something like how I described a minute ago and you take it to a post office, you could potentially get charged, over $10 to send that package, because the clerk at the post office might not know that that package can actually be sent as something other than a parcel or a package, and can be shipped, with a much cheaper option. And unfortunately, a lot of people just don't know that, whether that be post office workers or collectors. They don't know that it's possible to send bubble mailers domestically and internationally for, $2-3. I know I get bubble mailers from Canada pretty frequently, and the postage is always around $3.19.
Yeah, it seems about right.
Yeah, I've been told that the shipping method for that is just sending it as letter mail.
Yeah, just regular or just as a letter seems to work. Like I can't say on bigger cards, or if you do like a bulk deal, obviously you're probably going to get dinged and they'll send it as a package. If you're sending in a bigger bubble mailer, and it can't fit through the little slot. But other than that, if you're just shipping 1, 2, 3 cards and you get it pretty flat, it's just a regular letter mail. So that seems pretty fair.
Yeah. So that's typically how I receive most of my packages from Canada. And as far as myself in the United States sending something to Canada, it's essentially the exact same thing. It's just different terminology. So again, I'll package it exactly like how I just described, using the top loader, the decoys, the team bag, and the bubble mailer. And if you send it as a large envelope to any country in the world, you pretty much can do that for right around $3 US. Like Aaron said, it does come down to the thickness. It can only be so thick. So you're really only looking at being able to send 1, 2, maybe 3 cards, just depending on the thickness of the cards themselves, how much you can kind of get away with doing it that method. But yeah, I mean, I've been using that method for a while now, and I've never had a package returned or been requiring more postage upon delivery or anything like that. So, it definitely works. Another tip with that too, sometimes if you just go to a post office, the person that is helping you might not know that you can do that, and they're just trained, to kind of see general concepts and things and say, oh, anything that's a bubble mailer is a package. Well,
Right. Yeah.
that's not actually true. It does come down to the measurements of the package, so to speak, whether it can be a letter or it can be a parcel. And unfortunately, not enough postal workers are familiar with that distinguishment. So what I always do is I will print out my shipping labels ahead of time with the prepaid postage. And what I use is PayPal shipping. And a lot of you might not be familiar with that, because if you just go on PayPal, you actually can't find it. And it doesn't show up on the actual PayPal website. no matter where you look, whether it's on your account or if you go on a site map or anything, it just isn't listed anywhere. But it still is a thing. It's been a thing for years and years and years, but it's kind of that hidden gem of the hobby that unfortunately not enough people know about, but really can save you some money. And what you have to do to find that is if you just go on Google or any search engine, is just search for PayPal ship now. And there will be a few results that come up of, various blogs and things like that, that people have a link for it. And I think there's even one that's just on like kind of like a PayPal forum. And if you go on those posts, you can scroll down and find a link that will redirect you to the PayPal website. It'll have you log in, and then it'll take you to this web page that, it has you enter in all of your sending information, as well as all of the, the mailing address and the weight of the package and when you're sending it out and what method you want to use to send the package and all of that. So that's what I've been doing for years at this point. It works absolutely fantastically, and you get a discount on the postage compared to what you'd be paying at the post office, which is awesome. A lot of kind of the bigger online retailers are able to offer those cheaper shipping prices because they have deals with the postal companies in order to do that. So, if you're looking to save money on shipping, that's really the way to do it. Don't cheap out on your packaging and all that. Don't cheap out on compromising the safety of the card in order to save $1 or whatever it might be. If you want to save money on your shipping, go on PayPal. And I know for whatever reason, so many people in this hobby don't have PayPal, which is just insane to me, but that's a story for another day. Do yourself a favor. If you don't have PayPal, set up a PayPal. It takes 2 minutes. Like, just do it. You kind of have to have a PayPal account to be in the hobby. You theoretically can be in the hobby without one, but you're just greatly going to expand your horizons in the hobby if you have a PayPal account, mainly by being able to use eBay. But yeah, so PayPal Ship Now is awesome. And again, like I mentioned, you can decide what what method of postage you want to use. And under that, I don't know exactly how it works up in Canada or elsewhere in the world, but here in the US, there's an option that is just called, I think, first class large envelope. So you select that, and then you just enter the weight. Usually for a single card, a thin 35-point card, you can probably get away with just 2 ounces of postage. It'll be right around 2 ounces. So you might want to bump it up to 3 and, pay the whatever extra 15 cents or whatever it is, just to make sure you're better safe than sorry and they don't send it back or whatever. But, and like I said, you can send that package for under $3. Whereas opposed to if you were just sending that exact same package, nothing different about it at all, but it was being classified as a first class package, you're going to be paying literally over $11 US for that package. So, there are some people that just don't understand, like, oh, it's a bow mailer, it has to be considered a package, so I have to charge $12 to send it. It's not really true. Now, of course, one issue with that is that sending it as a large envelope does not include full tracking. Whereas if you do send it as a package, it does come with that full tracking from start to finish. The large envelope has basically a customs number. It's not truly tracking. If you enter it into the USPS website, it'll actually show you the shipping progress from where you mailed it until it gets to the border. But once it leaves the United States, then it does not get tracked any further, unfortunately. But, at the very least, it does show you and, the person that it's going to, that it's on the move, it's on its way, you did ship it out, so it's at least something. But yeah, for anything fairly cheap or, just a simple trade, or maybe you're just giving someone a card or whatever it might be, there's really no reason to be spending almost $12 sending out a card that maybe you're sending out a card that's worth $5 or $10. Why would you spend $12 to ship it when it's not even worth half that, or, if it's a $5 card, right? So, just kind of having that awareness of, okay, what am I sending? Is it wildly important for it to have full tracking and maybe get there a couple days sooner? Probably not, for relatively low end stuff. And various people have kind of their threshold of, when is it worth it to send it as a package and have that full tracking. For me, it's kind of 75, maybe $100 range. It kind of just depends on the deal, and who the person is I'm dealing with. Kind of a case by case. Anything over $100 definitely is going, as a package with the tracking. Just it gives people more peace of mind, both me as a sender and the person receiving the cards. If it does have that tracking, if something did happen to go wrong, you can at least hopefully be able to track that package down through the postal service and be able to find it. But yeah, like I said, I mean, that's really kind of a hidden gem of the hobby, is using that PayPal Ship Now feature and just being able to save money on your postage that way. Another thing to help save on some shipping costs, I don't think that I've ever bought a bubble mailer. I will just take bubble mailers that I receive in the mail that, and this is important, that are in good condition and are able to be used again. And I take those bubble mailers and I just repurpose them. I put a new label over top of the one that, had, that was coming for me. I put the new label on and make sure, everything is good with it. I don't use them if they have rips or tears or, whatever it might be. But if it's in very good condition, I will reuse that bubble mailer and, pass it along. And even though bubble mailers aren't wildly expensive, I mean, I know you can get them for, 3 for $1, 2 for $1 at a dollar store. But over time, that does add up. I mean, if you're adding an extra 50 cents of cost into every single card that you're shipping out, over time, that adds up pretty darn quickly. Whereas if you're just reusing those bubble mailers that you're receiving that are in good condition and can be reused, again, you're just cutting out, whatever, 30, 40, 50 cents out of your costs. So that's another great way to do it. Again, that's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, but if you are concerned and focused on trying to cut those costs as much as humanly possible, that's a really good way to do it as well. So between PayPal Ship Now and just reusing a bubble mailer, you very well might have just saved at least $1 on your postage. And then one other tip that I have, and I know this has been long-winded on, and I'll let Aaron talk in a minute, but just one other thing as far as helping to protect your cards, especially if you're sending them to someone else. Some of you probably know this trick and use it, and a lot of people, unfortunately, probably don't. And it really does work. It's easy, and it really seriously does make a huge difference in keeping cards in good shape. There's a couple different ways you can do it. Some people call it penny sleeve flicking. Some people just cut them. But essentially what you're doing is, with the penny sleeve, you have the one end that's open where you put the card into the penny sleeve. And at those top two corners, obviously alongside of the penny sleeve is sealed, so the card can't get out of the side. Where the side, the edge of the penny sleeve and the top of the penny sleeve where it's open, where those meet in that corner, if you either take your finger and just kind of flick that corner, open it up, put your finger in, and then just flick it. Or what I do, I just take scissors and just make a little cut, whatever, a quarter of an inch down or something. And it breaks that seal at the top of the penny sleeve by the corners. And what that allows you to do is actually slide the card in without damaging either of the corners. If you do it, you'll see exactly what I mean. It just allows you to get the card into the penny sleeve without having to jam it down in there to get it in the penny sleeve. And it seriously does make a huge difference. It works. I do that all the time now, and cannot recommend doing that enough. Obviously you don't want to be cutting like halfway down on the edge of the penny sleeve, because that, is going to do more damage than good. But if it's just at the very top and it helps you get the card in there without damaging either of the bottom corners, that's going to go a long way in making sure that your cards are staying in as good of shape as humanly possible. And that goes for, just cards that you're keeping for yourself, or maybe, you're shipping out to someone else. But that's just a little trick to, help keep those cards in as good as condition as possible. So that's been a lot from me. Aaron, what do you have to say about all this?
Pretty much exactly what you just said. No, you definitely hit a lot of amazing points, especially that one about the PayPal shipping. That's one that I personally haven't used myself, but it's one that I've known a lot of people to use, and it's a very effective method as far as saving some money for sure. And as far as like the penny sleeve corner flicking, that was one I actually found out about on our episode with Jeremy when he told us about that, because prior to that, like I didn't even know that technique existed. I've been just putting cards in penny sleeves and kind of hoping for the best. So that's something that was awesome to learn as well, and I'm sure people would definitely appreciate it. Yeah, so definitely some great thoughts on your part there. As far as me and my shipping, pretty much exactly the same. I think we're all pretty, I guess, standard when it comes to our shipping methods, as far as the team bag, top loader, penny sleeve, and then the decoys on the side. I definitely do that in practice as well. I don't tape all around the bubble mailer. I just usually tape the openings. I kind of pinch them down a little bit. And then so if there is any water, it can't really get in. And as far as the bubble mailer itself, the ones I have are kind of plastic on the top. So they're kind of the white plasticky ones. So, if they get in water, it's not that big of a deal. As long as, the ends are taped and sealed correctly, there won't be any water damage, hopefully. But yeah, that's pretty much the only main difference as far as our shipping techniques. We're pretty standard with that. Yeah, so I guess we're just going to move on to, I guess, the fun part of the episode. Eric's going to have a fun time with this. Just kind of packaging horror stories that we've unfortunately received from other collectors in the past. I've been pretty good, in my collecting, I guess, career. Nothing really sticks out to me too much. I'm not really too big on trade, so a lot of the time I am doing more buying than trading. So I feel like, not all the time, but I think if you're buying a card from somebody, chances are, they'll take a little bit more care. Whereas if it's just a straight up trade, some people might get a little bit more lazy with it. But hey, that's just me. But as far as horror stories, one in recent memory, I receive a lot of cards from Russia because of my collection and the KHL cards that I've picked up in the recent past. So for them, like I've seen a lot of cards wrapped in cardboard, things like that. Just really a lot of plain white envelopes, which I'll touch on more in a second. But yeah, not really like bad. Like the card gets there in perfect shape, but just they'll wrap things in Russian newspaper, a lot of cardboard, not necessarily decoys like we see here. That could be because the products over there, to my knowledge, don't really carry decoys. So that could be part of it, like just the lack of decoys, I guess, but who knows why. But yeah, a lot of weird wrapping on the cards for me there. But yeah, nothing too bad. But as far as plain white envelopes are, I haven't had any damage, but I have had, where some guy sends a card out to you and, you paid whatever for the shipping and, a pretty decent amount for the shipping. And, the card comes in a plain white envelope and, you open up the envelope and it's in a penny sleeve or something and the card's fine. Maybe it wasn't traveling over a very large distance. So, as long as the card's fine, I'm going to give you positive feedback as far as eBay and all that. But again, if you're packaging cards in a plain white envelope, you'll see a lot of people in the hobby steer clear of them completely. A lot of times they won't even accept you shipping in a PWE if they know that that's how you do it, or if you've told them that you're going to ship it that way, just because of the likelihood that it could get damaged. But and Eric, we've talked about this as well before, but I'm okay with plain white envelopes. I know that a lot of people just sort of detest them to death, especially in this hobby, and I see why. I see how they are so fragile and brittle, but compared to bubble envelopes. But as long as both parties agree that we will be shipping in a plain white envelope, like say if you're doing a trade or just a buy, that's fine as long as you're paying the appropriate amount and not getting ripped off. And as far as the shipping itself, if you package the card itself correctly, with the decoys and top loader penny sleeve, it's going to be small, but it's going to be packaged pretty securely, especially if it's not traveling too far. So I don't mind a plain white envelope, and I think you can package your card in a quality way, even if you're using a plain white envelope. But it just depends. I mean, I've definitely seen a lot of horror stories come as a result of shipping that way, which I think why it kind of gets a bad rap. And a lot of people will not ship in a white envelope like that. I personally don't, just because I don't make a lot of deals myself. But when I do, I just want to make sure they're packaged, as best they can. So I'm 100% a bubble mail guy. As far as receiving it, as long as you clear it with me first, that's totally fine. We'll see how it goes, and depending on what kind of card I'm receiving, of course. But that's fine. Just make sure, if you are a collector with a stack of them and you don't want to make them go to waste, just package the card itself correctly, and just make sure you clear it with the person who's buying from you, and make sure to charge them a sensible amount. But yeah, as far as horror stories, just a little weird packaging from Russia I found. So that's it for me. I know, kind of, Eric, you got a lot to say on that, so I'll just let you take the wheel here.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do. I just wanted to jump back to your PWE point. Like you said, PWEs do get a pretty bad reputation in the hobby, and unfortunately, most of the time that is warranted because people just aren't doing them well. But I want to be clear, and like Aaron mentioned this too, but I just want to clarify, PWEs can be done really well. Like they really can. The problem is that the majority of people that are using PWEs don't do that. And that's why they get the bad reputation. There was a stretch of time for international shipping that I did essentially use PWEs. But what I would do is I would, just protect the heck out of the card on the inside of the package to make sure that that card was extremely safe. So, what I would do is I'd do exactly what I mentioned earlier, but then I would usually kind of cut like a sheet of cardboard, thin-ish cardboard to generally the size of the envelope, to kind of reinforce the inside. And then again, I would tape, the entire outside of the envelope to give that, some more reinforcement as far as water damage and ripping and tearing and things like that, to the point where honestly, sometimes I felt like my PWE was safer than how some people pack cards in bubble mailers. I mean, obviously, it's a terrible example, but if you, look at that stack of cards that I got from the dude in the printer paper, shoved in a bubble mailer, well, yeah, he used a bubble mailer. Woohoo. How effective was that? It wasn't, because it had nothing to do with the actual package itself. It had to do with how he packaged the cards inside of it. So that's really the key. It's not about the outside. That does factor into it, absolutely. And all things equal, is a bubble mailer going to be safer than just a plain white envelope? Yeah, probably. But it goes back to how you do it on the inside. If you don't package it well on the inside and you put it in a bubble mailer, are the odds at least potentially okay that it will arrive in decent shape? Yeah, certainly better than if you packaged it like that inside a PWE. But would I rather take, one single card wrapped in a piece of printer paper and shoved in a bubble mailer? Or would I rather have one card packaged well in a penny sleeve top loader, taped shut with decoys, a team bag, put inside a PWE that's reinforced really well? Yeah, I'm taking that method any day of the week, because the odds of that card getting to me in good shape are a lot better. So, it really just comes down to how you are actually packaging it, because PWEs can be done really well and it does help save money. And again, that's not the end all be all. The end goal for you sending something out is that that card makes it to the person in good shape. And like we've said, sometimes things happen and you just can't control that. Things happen, accidents happen. It's part of life, unfortunately. But you should be doing everything in your power to make sure that that card is going to be in good shape. And one story with that I'll share, I had bought a card on eBay that was a very elusive card for my Ryan Dzingel collection that I've been looking for years. And I finally found one for a fair price and paid. It was shipped. and weeks and weeks later, I hadn't received it. So I checked the tracking, and it got stuck at a sorting facility, and didn't really know what to think of it. So I waited a little bit longer, and it still wasn't moving, still wasn't moving. So, I told the seller and just said, hey, like, I haven't received the card. Like, I know it's obviously not your fault because I can see the tracking. Like, I know you sent it out, but, just so you know, I haven't gotten it. I just wanted to make you aware of the situation. And, he ended up refunding me, which was nice of him to do. Obviously I was hoping for that, but, at the end of the day, he did fulfill his obligation as the seller of sending the card out. And, I could tell that it had been sent out. So, unfortunately for him, he was out of that money, or so he thought. Fast forward, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 months, and I go and grab my mail, and there's this plastic bag in my mailbox, like a sealed plastic.
Oh, yeah, I've had that happen.
Kind of like if you guys ever
Yeah.
subscribe to magazines, it's kind of like that plastic coating wrapping, sealed around something. And
Yeah, because it was like damage, like water damage, things like that.
right. So I pull it out and I'm like, what the heck is this? And, inside the bag is this just mangled bubble mailer, like just absolutely destroyed. And I'm like, oh boy, like what happened here?
What is this? Like,
And, so I sit down and open it up, and, obviously, like I said, bubble mailer just mangled. I take out, this, the contents, and, the team bag is destroyed, covered with all this junk, like black stuff. I don't even know what it was. Open the team bag, decoys, like, have that same crap on it. And then, oh, here's this top loader. Oh, here's my Ryan DeZingle card. All these months later, guess what? It survived because he packaged it well. And, I don't know if the thing got caught up in a sorting machine or got dropped and run over by a truck or what the heck happened to it. But if that guy had simply just taken the card, put it in a penny sleeve and top loader, and put it in the bubble mailer, it wouldn't have made it. Without a doubt, him putting it in that team bag, putting the decoys around it, that saved the card. And fortunately for both of us, I ended up getting the card, and I was able to send him payment again, to make sure that, he got the money that he rightly deserved for sending out the card. Luckily, it had that happy ending, but that was purely just because he did a good job with the packaging. I was definitely very sure to thank him for doing that. But yeah, I mean, as far as actual horror stories where they've gone wrong, I've mentioned a few already. Another one that comes to mind, it wasn't truly a horror story because it ended up being okay, but if you guys remember that Jack Hughes SP Authentic Future Watch Auto inscribed that I got earlier this summer, I don't know what the guy was doing. And I asked him, and he just said, oh, I ran out of bubble mailers, and sorry, I'll never do it again. Why are you doing that with a $400 card? Like, never do that. There really is no excuse for not shipping something in proper supplies. Like, if you have to wait a day to go buy a bubble mailer, if you don't have any, I don't think anyone's going to get too mad at you for that. Take the time and do it the right way. Simple as that. But anyway, going back to that, just how he packaged it, with that kind of like glued shut bubble wrap, kind of created this vacuum seal around the card, and I couldn't get into the package at all. So I had to just cut into the middle of the package and hope that I wasn't cutting into the card, and I was cutting and cutting and cutting, and I cut into the top loader, and I was like, oh, like, I just cut into the top loader. Like, hopefully I didn't just cut this card in half. And luckily it ended up just being at the very top of the top loader. So the card was okay. But I mean, that could have been a serious disaster if I cut into a $400 card just because the dude packaged it really strangely. So that's one that comes to mind, even though luckily it was okay. I don't even know how many times I've sent you photos, Aaron, of just strange package jobs that I've received over the last few months. I feel like I'm doing it at least every week, but
Too many times. Too many
Yeah.
times for sure. This summer has not been your summer as far as shipping goes. You have a lot of stories. Too many stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, even this past week, I got a big package again for my 0304 Master Collection. I bought a big lot of 0304 Upper Deck Series 1 and 2 cards, kind of like a partial set. I wasn't exactly sure how he was going to send it, so I was kind of just hoping it would be okay. And he sent them, and it was probably about 350 or 400 cards altogether, somewhere in that range. And he put them in, just one of the white cardboard boxes, but it was, I think, a 600 count or 650 count box. And he didn't put anything in to keep the cards from moving around. So like they were just flying all over the place within the box.
That's
And
terrible, especially for a set.
I know. And unfortunately, some of the cards, on the ends did have some decent corner and edge damage, but luckily they weren't cards of significant value. But I mean, within that lot, the Eric Stahl Young Gun was in there, the Ryan Kessler Young Gun was in there. So it's like, man, like if those cards had been damaged, that would have been not fun at all. But luckily those two were okay. And the overwhelming majority of the cards were fine. But yeah, in an instance like that, if you're sending just a huge amount of cards, and obviously you're not going to penny sleeve and top loader every single card. I mean, that just isn't plausible. And no one would expect you to do that realistically, and it's fine to put them in those white boxes, but just put something in there to prevent that movement. My mantra for packaging cards is there should be zero movement anywhere within that package. Obviously, if you're putting in a bubble mailer, the top loader might slide around within the bubble mailer, but I'm talking about the actual card itself should not be moving within that package at all. There should be no room for it to be moving within a top loader, within a box, whatever it might be. That card needs to be very stable and secure within whatever you are using to package it. That's the biggest thing as far as packaging the card, is preventing that movement, as far as, preserving the condition of mainly the corners and edges in that instance, as well as preventing bending. So anything that you can do to help limit those types of things is ideal. And yeah, unfortunately, I've had way too many packages this summer that have not done that effectively. I'm sure there are lots of others, like I said, but I can't think of more examples off the top of my head just because there's been so many of them. But yeah, luckily, like I said, I've escaped most of those situations. There's been a few that definitely were not great outcomes, like that complete set of rookie cards I mentioned, that pretty much every corner on every card had damage because the dude wrapped it in printer paper. It's just unfortunate when you open a package and you see something that you just kind of go, oh man, like, is this thing going to be okay? It's a love-hate part of the hobby. I mean, it's obviously a necessary component of the hobby in order to be moving cards, from one person to another, but it can be extremely frustrating when people don't put effort into it. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about the topic. Aaron, is there anything you want to wrap up with?
That point about no movement within the top loader is a very good point. Just definitely having no movement with the card itself to kind of move around is definitely very important for the condition of that card. We pretty much covered it all this episode, and we just want to really hear from you guys. Unfortunately, it is part of the hobby at some point, depending on how long you've been involved in it. But we just want to hear from you guys if you have any packaging horror stories. Hopefully the card turned out okay, but it's always definitely a scary moment when you see that package wrapped up in, plastic or something like that, or printer paper, as far as Eric is concerned. We're just going to post this question on social media. So definitely, like always, keep an eye out for that. And yeah, we'll see you next time at the next episode.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like we mentioned earlier, be sure to keep an eye on our social media this week to check out that Alexis Lafreniere giveaway, and be sure to enter that. And hopefully you guys can come away with some really cool upper deck items there to start out your Alexis Lafreniere collections. So as always, please be sure to follow us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Sunrise Cardcast, and on Twitter at SunriseCC. Please also be sure to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice to make sure you never miss a future episode. Until next time on Center Ice Cardcast, keep collecting those hockey cards.